Daniela, tell me, where did you grow up and what kind of kid were you?
So I grew up in Trinidad and Tobago and then moved to Miami, Florida for my teenage years and college years. So from early on, I was exposed to different cultures, different perspectives, and different ways of seeing the world, right? Chicago is home today. It's a pretty special place for me. It's where I started my career, where I met my husband, and where, we both have family. In terms of what kind of kid I was, I loved playing outside. Definitely curious, independent. I asked a ton of questions. I liked to understand how things worked, being around people, and really being part of the community that we've built as a family. We're a really big family. And it's interesting to look back because much of what shaped me as a kid, curiosity, adaptability, connecting with people, are the same qualities, I would say, that really defines me as a leader.
And tell me about your first paid job.
My first paid job was actually babysitting, but everyone had babysitting jobs. But my first, real paying job was in retail, working in stores and learning how to drive customer experience, working with, driving sales and really asking, hard questions around how do we solve people problems when the customer was unhappy. So learning to think about the customer as the center of how we serve, how companies serve most of the people that are, most of the customers that they serve. It's, I learned that very early on.
Tell me a little bit about sales and how has that helped you today as a CHRO or during your tenure in some of the companies that you've been?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I'm a business person first and, working on the business side really helped me understand the role that people play in organizations. People are there to drive the benefits, deliver the results and drive the benefits. And, understanding the business really makes you stronger in HR, which is obviously where I sit. Being a part of the business really taught me how to look at the customer, how to think about the economics, how to do more with less when you need to.
Mhm.
Yeah, look, I think there are two places in which, in HR where it's heightened for, business leaders and HR to really connect. It's in that workforce planning space and it's in the place where we attract and then retain talent. So talent acquisition. They're very popular because of turnover, right? And I've always believed that workforce planning shouldn't be an HR exercise, right? It has to start with the business strategy. And so, if the business is planning to grow, we as HR needs to understand what that means in terms of skills, in terms of people, in terms of timing, in terms of cost. So I work very closely with finance and with the business to look at our workforce data, our headcount, our turnover, our productivity, our labor costs, the future demand, right? And push that conversation because often they're not thinking about the future demand. They're like really trying to get through today. And then use all of that to translate it into a workforce plan, right?
Interesting. And I'm curious about your thoughts on the hybrid workforce, right? As we move into a time
Mhm.
when agents and AI is helping, maybe making things more efficient by eliminating some admin work. But
Mhm.
how do you think about a workforce that would be hybrid from a workforce planning standpoint of view?
Look, I think with AI, it is sort of most companies are in that hybrid situation already is today, right? And one thing I would say is that I think CHROs need to like maybe give themselves a little bit of a break to be in that messy middle because companies are figuring it out. No one has done it perfectly and has a Harvard Business Review case study about what good looks like yet, right? We are in that middle. Yeah, look, I mean, I think first I've never really been afraid of stepping into something new. In fact, I think some of the most important moments in my career came from building upon what I already knew and moving into learning something different. Moving from the business side, to consulting for me was about expanding my perspective. I learned how to run a business, how to make decisions, how to manage competing priorities. And consulting gave me the opportunity to see how other companies approached similar challenges. And suddenly I was learning across industries and across organizations and across cultures. And then moving into HR was really about bringing those experiences together. I realized that the part of the business I was most passionate about is the people side.
Mhm.
I would say that, my HR teams tend to, I tend to break the function into like three parts. That strategic business facing HR leaders that are bumped up against the business, and their roles are about dissecting the business strategy into people priorities for the functions or for the department or for the entity, the business group. The HR operations, which is everything I would say in the back, all around is, the compensation, payroll, benefits, HR systems is all about ensuring we have efficiencies and we have effectiveness in delivering HR needs to individuals because the relationship an individual has with HR in the company is super important when their personal needs need to be met. They have life changes, they have health matters, they have leave conditions that needs to be addressed. That is a direct relationship with HR. And I think that HR operations has to be a smooth, well-oiled machine to really build the credibility. And then for me, the COEs are about bringing in the leading practices, building the strategic programs around talent acquisition, engagement, succession planning. And and about how you scale those across the organization and prepare prepare our management, our people leaders to really own and lead through those things for our people because HR can't be everywhere all the time. And we want I like for the management team to really own and lead talent
Yeah.
with us advocating for it.
Tell me how you learn. What are some of the resources that you go to? What's your feed on social? Like, tell me a little bit more about your learning style.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's no one place to learn from. I think that, for me I pull from a variety of perspectives at all times and I kind of stay on top of them and then it's a muscle that you create and you just keep going at it. So I've gotten, great learnings from leaders I've worked with, my own, business and consulting experience. External thought leadership from organizations, the top tier consulting firms, the small niche guys. You can't go wrong with pulling, information from those places.
And what is your purpose in life?
My purpose in life is about being surrounded by the people that I love. It's about being able to wake up excited about what I am doing, but also having a life outside of work that gives me energy
Yeah.
and perspective. Yeah. I'm a simple gal. I love HR. I love people in organizations. I love solving challenging problems. I love staying ahead of what's going on in the marketplace to figure out how things can be applied to the business.